Goolsby with EWTN News Nightly. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and join us this evening.
I feel very called to become a member of the Catholic Church.
Love the Catholic Church. It's just the best place to be.
From the studios of EWTN, this is Open Line. In North America, call toll-free 1-833-288-EWTN. That's 1-833-288-3986. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. You can also text the letters EWTN to 55000 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
A tremendous Thursday to each and every one of you. Fasten your seatbelts. It's the maiden voyage of Ask the President. Our very own President and Chief Operating Officer at EWTN, Doug Keck, is in the house, and he's ready to answer your questions today. The phone numbers are 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. If you're outside the United States and Canada, he's your president too. Your number is 1-205-271-2985, and we will put you straight to the front of the line at 1-205-271-2985. You can always send us an email, openline@ewtn.com, or you can text your question. Text the letters EWTN to 55000. Wait for a response. Text your first name and your question. Message and data rates may apply. I'm Jack Williams, Michael McCall producing the program. Your call screeners, Mr. Ryan Penny and Jeff Burson, handling our social media endeavors. So if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook Live, just type a question into that chat window. It may find its way to us by the end of the program. Normally, our host on Thursday is Father Larry Richards. Father is on his annual diocesan priest retreat and is unable to join us, but never fear. We have employed
That's kind of sad, Jack. That's kind of sad, Jack.
The man who needs no introduction, which works out great because I don't have one,
right.
Mr. Doug Keck.
Well, the one thing I wanted to make sure everybody knew while everyone was going, this is a one-off here. This is not the beginning. And Father Larry, he might be calling in halfway through the show if it goes the way it may go. It's the way it started out. No, but I'm thrilled to be here. It's great. Obviously, I get to be on Teresa's show once a week on Friday mornings, kind of talking about what's going on. And obviously, we had an opportunity where Father Larry couldn't be here, so we decided maybe we'd do something a little different, give people maybe some opportunity to ask some questions about broader things related to EWTN and our outreach and what we're doing, or some of the latest things we're doing in news and across the board and around the world, as you indicated, Jack, and certainly on the radio side with that great new launch up in Connecticut as well.
That's right.
So we thought this might be something different, but we shall see.
We shall see. So if you'd like to talk to Doug Keck, the number is 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. If there's anything you ever wondered about the inner workings of this great apostolate that Mother Angelica started so many years ago, today is your opportunity to talk to Doug Keck. So for our listeners who may not be intimately familiar with the history of the network back 20-plus years ago when you became involved, what's your background, first of all, in the industry, and then what led you to EWTN?
Yeah, well, for those who haven't heard it, I guess I've been here since for about 23 years, came in 1996. I'm originally from New York. I started in New York Radio News and then was disc jockey out on Long Island and got into cable TV in the 70s, mid-70s, and worked for a gentleman who started HBO, Mr. Charles Dolan, who owned Cablevision, and worked on a bunch of startups for various programming initiatives that were regional sports networks. I got to work with the Mets and the Yankees for a number of years, worked directly with Mickey Mantle, worked on the startup of several regional news services, including News 12 Long Island, Jersey, New England, and also Connecticut. In addition to that, like I said, I worked on various sports channels around the country, which are basically became the Fox and now are up for sale. But those are different things I did in the past. I worked on the startup of American Movie Classics, Bravo, independent film channel, various other initiatives that we did, along with working on the startup of CNBC since we were in a partnership with NBC. And I was working on all of those wonderful things and working in all different aspects of the business, in front of and behind the camera, so to speak, and in radio as well. And I made a marriage encounter with my wife, and it began from there. And we started thinking about what God means in our life. And we had a child that was born with special needs, which kind of clarified a lot of things of what's important in life. And through various episodes, I found myself down here at EWTN in 1996. And I love it. And it's the best decision my family ever made. We've been here for 23 years.
You hear all kinds of stories about the exploits of Mother Angelica in the early days of the cable industry. Did you ever run across her in any of these shows or anything?
I never heard of Mother Angelica. I still remember the day. It was in 1988, and I had worked on the startup with something that was called the Vision Interfaith Satellite Network. It was like C-SPAN was put together by the cable industry, in theory, to bring government into your home. The reality was it was done to placate government so they would leave cable alone. What was happening in that time period in the 80s, there was still limited channel capacity. We were talking about 80 channel systems and things like that, and in some places even 36 channel systems. It's not like it is today. And so there might be an EWTN, there would be a TBN, there'd be this channel or that channel, some religious channel, the 700 Club channel, PTL, those kind of things. And so someone came up with the great idea is that if we just have one channel which everybody can be on, it can be like C-SPAN. And then we don't have to worry about it. We can put you on that channel and say there's a Catholic show on that channel or whatever, a Mormon show on that channel, and that will satisfy everybody. So we worked on the startup of that. I was at the launch of that in New York when it was launched. It later became like Faith and Values, and then ultimately it's what the Hallmark channel is today. But that's what we worked on. And so we had, along with the channels that we ran ourselves internally for our company, we also had facilities to run for others. So we ran services for other people. Something was called the Cable Video Store. And so we were always looking around for possible projects. And one of the ones that was brought to us was that there was this channel in Alabama run by this Mother Angelica, where I had never heard of. And I'm like, Mother Angelica? I thought she was a Black Baptist lady. I just assumed when I heard that, that's what the image was in my mind. And the gentleman said, no, she's a Catholic nun. She's got the. I had not heard of her at all. And it was only later, like I said, when I made my marriage encounter, that I actually started to pay attention to what was running on the local Catholic channel, Telecare at the time, and saw Mother Angelica and Father Rutler and Father Groeschel, and became what Scott Hahn would describe as a tapeworm. I would record the shows on videotape, dub them onto cassette, and then when I was working around the house, I would listen to them on tape, and that's kind of how I got used to and involved with the EWTN. And this first time I ever saw Mother Angelica, the first time I met her, I came down here on my own when I was at a convention in New Orleans in the early 90s, and I was introduced to her that time, and that was the first time I met her.
Very interesting. She kind of made the rules up as she went when she got this thing going in the early days, and especially in this radio venture that started some 11, 12 years after she started the TV venture. A lot of people that didn't have radio experience were involved in that in the early days. And there was a sentiment rolling around that secular was secular, but we were not secular and we were spiritual. So a lot of very tried and true, and certainly not unholy, best practices from secular radio were really kind of shunned by the Catholic radio industry, quote unquote, in the early days as being not the way you wanted to do things. And I'm sure of it that you found a little bit of resistance when you got into this world with some good practices from your secular days that would benefit the network that I'm sure you have since employed.
Well, I think you could say that in relation to the television network as well, because of the style and the nature. I mean, something came out of Mother Angelica and the Sisters, it was, which was started and worked on, as you indicated, by people like Jody Copeland, who were in the construction crew, and that's how they learned it on the fly, and so they did a fantastic, amazing, godlike job, considering the lack of training ahead of time that all those people did. and they did a fabulous job. And on the radio side, really, the early days of radio, really, when Mother got into it, was really shortwave radio, which is kind of a different style, and a different idea behind it was a lot of different programs in a lot of different languages going around the world. That didn't quite work out. And so very often in the beginning of the radio period, it was a lot of television on radio, basically just reusing shows that were done for television, which were mostly talking head, on radio. And that was kind of the format that was used. And like you said, as we move forward and could attract more people who had some industry experience, it made it easier to kind of bring some of that into the mix. And I think one of the great things that you and Tom and all the guys have done, and hopefully we've done on the TV side as well with all of our staff, is kind of make it so that we've been able to improve the quality and the presentation without impacting the message and without making people feel like somehow we went off the rails.
833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. If you'd like to ask Doug Keck, the president and COO of EWTN, a question today, the number is 833-288-3986. EWTN's Open Line Thursday. Doug Keck sitting in for Father Larry.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
I'm really a revert. There are a lot of converts on Catholic radio, a lot of reverts, those who have come back to the faith. And ever since I came back to a practice of my faith, I started praying the rosary, going to even daily Mass, God has led me on an amazing journey and used me in a lot of incredible ways that I never dreamed would have been possible.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, tonight, midnight Eastern on EWTN Radio.
It's time for Family Man with Dr. Gregory Popchak.
Did you know there are two kinds of tantrums? The first type, distress tantrums, are the most common in children 4 and under. They aren't the result of children trying to manipulate you as much as your kids being overwhelmed, overstimulated, or frustrated. The best cure for distress tantrums is bringing your child to a quiet place and providing lots of loving attention to help your child calm down and come back online. The second type, manipulative tantrums, occur in children who are old enough to have good self-control but still use drama as a tool. The best way to respond to these tantrums is to calmly place the child in a quiet, safe timeout place until he's calm enough to apologize sincerely, accept your direction, and rehearse the more appropriate alternative with you. How long are they in for? Well, that's up to them. Want more tips to make discipline easier? Check out my book, Parenting with Grace. I'm Dr. Greg Popchak, but you can call me Family.
To discover more ways faith can enrich your life, visit CatholicCounselors.com.
833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. EWTN's president and COO, Doug Keck, sitting in today for Father Larry Richards. Be sure to check out EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Great new program with Catherine Zeltner. It's actually Catherine Hadro now. I need to make the transition myself. Sunday mornings, 10 o'clock Eastern Time on EWTN Radio. Doug, we talked about the changes that have happened in technology and in philosophy as we've gone along, and I've always found it interesting. I've witnessed it myself since I've been associated with the network, both as a radio affiliate and now in-house here at EWTN, but it's happened throughout the years that as the network has grown and outgrown the ability to jerry-rig the technology, our Lord has seemed to drop industry professionals into our lap, much as they did you, who have had some sort of a conversion experience usually, and find themselves at the right place at the right time when the network needed something.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. I think that's been our experience. That's why many times we'll meet people at different times in their career, and I'm sure you've found this as well, in the idea of meeting somebody who's thinking about it, trying, and it's not the right fit right then. And I usually try to say, that's okay. These things take time. It took me probably from the time I had the idea of coming to EWTN about 5 years before I actually made the transition, many times because it means moving from New York to Alabama and moving my family. I had an autistic child. There was a lot involved to think about, leaving a career where I was basically set for life if I wanted to stay there. those kind of things. And I think there's other people in the industry, too, who have that same situation. They're looking to do something. They'd like to move from money to meaning in some ways, but can I do it this way? Can I do it that way? Can I stay where I live and still do it? And obviously technology, as you mentioned, Jack, has allowed much more of that to happen. So in many ways, people can do that. We have a lot of artists and other people can do work remotely when you couldn't do that kind of things 20 years ago. So it's really exciting. But it does seem to be that the Lord clearly has his own timing, that he brings people into situations that they need to be. In fact, I was just talking to Andy Pollock, who's in charge of our group in St. Clair in the UK, where we have our radio network and our TV network. And there's a gentleman working at Walsingham, which is what our office is now, that Shrine. We have a studio there. We're starting to do some production out of there, Norman. And he was from South Africa. We dealt with him 10 years ago, shooting some programs in South Africa he did with us. And then he was thinking of trying to get a job in Germany, and it didn't kind of pan and work out. And then he showed up in England, and he's like the perfect fit. He's doing a fabulous job there. And it's just, again, that way of, if you've got an idea that maybe you want to do something like this, don't get discouraged if the first opportunity doesn't work out. You got to keep trying to move in the right direction. And at the same time, it used to say that opportunity, it's not just the ability. You got to be ready when the door opens, and you got to have, as Mother would say, one foot in the air and a queasy feeling in your stomach to go through it and to take that leap of faith. But you've got to also remember that when you're doing that you still, if you have a family and those you have to be realistic about these things, because we still live in a temporal world. And so as much as it's great to work here and do wonderful things that we get to do, it's still a job, and still things have to get done, and people still have to pay their bills, just like EWTN has to, as Father Mitch reminds everybody every week.
Yeah. 833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. Couple of open lines for you at 833-288-3986. Our leadoff hitter today is Jeff in Stockton, California. He's a first-time caller listening to Sirius XM Channel 130. Jeff, you are on with EWTN's president, Doug Keck.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. I love your shows. Listen to the radio station almost all the time when I'm working.
So what's your question, Jeff?
So I just heard you say that you worked with Mickey Mantle, and he plays college ball now, but he's grown up in the faith, thank God. And he always wears number 7 for Mickey Mantle, so I was wondering if you could tell us, give us a little bit of insight into what kind of guy he was.
Well, I think Mickey was a guy like many other guys. I think, I dealt with him for a couple of years when he was doing announcing work for us in the mid-'80s, because we had started carrying the Mets and Yankee broadcasts, the games that were not being televised back in the day, when you couldn't get every game as you can these days if you have the right sports channel. And so I was Mickey's contact, so I would schedule him and make sure he knew where he needed to be. And I think Mickey was a guy, and I think if you read a lot of the material that's out there, Mickey had a tough life. He grew up, he's a wonderful ball player, obviously got hurt very early in his career. Both his father and his uncle died very young. Mickey had the idea that he wasn't going to be around a long time, and so he kind of grabbed a lot of the gusto very quickly. He was a small-town guy from Commerce, Oklahoma, living in New York, hanging out with Billy Martin and Whitey Ford. So, I think with him, as his life went on, I think he started to get a better handle on issues like drinking and things like that. And, I always found Mickey a great guy to deal with and a good man. And I think certainly in his latter stages, when he was very ill, I think he had a conversion experience in some ways.
Many reports
I would
of
say,
that, yeah.
really, that I think you could see in his life. And he was, a great baseball player. By today's standards, he wasn't that tall. I was taller than he was. He's very broad, but he wasn't that tall.
Boy,
but
Keck
that's
could
what
run before he got hurt.
Yeah, well, they called him the Commerce Comet, because he was so fast. And unfortunately, there's that famous picture of him on the ground at Yankee Stadium with Joe DiMaggio making the catch over while Mickey's on the ground, because he stepped in that drainage pipe in Yankee Stadium in right field, I believe. So So, yeah, I think like a lot of famous people you meet, I think one of the things that helped me in my life was meeting people like him and others in, in the media business, whether it be sports or another, to realize that they weren't necessarily great people and they weren't necessarily bad people. They were people like everybody else, and that money and success didn't make them necessarily happy. And that kind of is a good lesson, I think, for a lot of us out there, is to realize that, for those athletes, a lot of times it's the competition that matters the most. And so it was interesting. It was very interesting. Met some people who were really nice people and other people you wouldn't want to spend a lot of time with.
And that's what they often reflect on. Whenever you see them, they talk about the competition and the camaraderie. You never hear them talking about the money.
No, exactly. I mean, that's part of the business. That's there. That's there. But really, these guys are doing it because they're driven to do it, and it's also why when you deal with someone like that, you're gonna be driven with a triple type A personality, and that you got to know that going in.
833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. This opens a lineup for you at 833-288-3986. Next up is Joseph in Grand Blanc, Michigan. First-time caller listening on Ave Maria Radio. Joseph, you are on with Doug Keck.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks, Jack. We are very, very blessed to have EWTN and, of course, in our neck of the woods, Ave Maria Radio Network. And the question I have for both of you, particularly Doug, is as a Catholic radio network, how does one balance loyalty to the Pope and the Catholic hierarchy against some of the changes that are disturbing or in crisis mode with the papacy and the hierarchy with regard to things like the upcoming Pan-Amazonian Synod, things that we know Mother Angelica would be aghast at hearing about? That's my question. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Joseph. Obviously, a shout-out to our friends Al Cresta and Teresa Tomeo and Mike Jones out there, and the wonderful work. We've been real good partners with them over the years, continue to have a great relationship with them, and have worked very closely together, really, an outreach of EWTN, working with other Catholic media apostles like Guadalupe Radio, Covenant, etc., around the country on radio, and in supporting our television and our news side as well. I guess the easiest way for us to do is kind of like we always have tried to do, which is we follow the magisterium and we focus on the truth. And so we chase the truth and follow the truth wherever it leads us. Sometimes the truth will put us in a position where some of our viewers aren't thrilled with that perspective of the truth. Other times, others in the hierarchy or even in Rome might be unhappy because of us reporting the truth. And I think that's really what we're all about. I mean, when I came here, one of the things we really focused on, and I got from Mother Angelica, we started with Veritatis Splendor, the splendor to truth from John Paul II. And I think that's really what our news guys under Dan Burke and his team, Raymond Arroyo, are all about, attempting to get to the truth. I think we have to be careful at times that we don't want to be overly pejorative. We don't want to be necessarily, slanting things. And the other thing we're dealing with, too, remember, is that we, for the first time ever, and I know I was talking to Steve Ray, who's got a new book out about the Pope, and some others who've written books similar, is the idea you really have a day-to-day, moment-by-moment social media pontificate, which we've never had before. Years ago, people didn't know what the Pope said on any particular given day, and much of what comes is off the cuff and things like that, and we deal with the idea that, we're not talking about impeccability. There's nothing wrong with saying that Doug Keck is a sinner, and so is the Pope. And so are all the cardinals. And if they would deny that, then they would be denying one of the tenets of our faith, and I don't think they do. So I think what we try to do is present the information we have solidly. We try to make sure, I think our expression here in our news group has always been, and in general, is not to be first, but to be right. We have no problem with other people reporting stories before us or running ahead. We're not competing. That's a secular way of thinking of these things. What we're thinking about is, what's the truth? What's the facts? We want people, if they hear about it first someplace else, to turn to CNA, EWTN News Nightly, EWTN Catholic Radio, and say, okay, I heard this. Let me check with EWTN and see what they're saying, because I trust them, and we want that to continue to be really our beacon.
833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. That's 833-288-3986. You know, one big piece of news that's happened in the radio front here of late is the launch of a brand new station in the Northeast in Connecticut, where they've been working on this for a very long time. Extremely excited to welcome another new station, now part of the EWTN radio family. Hello to everybody listening on Veritas Catholic Radio, a 24-hour EWTN Catholic radio station broadcasting on AM 1350 in beautiful Norwalk, Connecticut. Their great signal has the potential to reach thousands of souls in Fairfield County, Westchester County, and Long Island, a little part of your old stomping grounds.
Sounds good to me.
With the truth of the Catholic faith. Many thanks to Steve Lee and his great team at Veritas Catholic Radio for all their hard work and prayers to get this new station on the air. So welcome to all those new listeners of Veritas Catholic Radio, AM 1350, the newest member of the EWTN radio family. If you'd like to be on the program and talk to Doug Keck, our president and COO, the number is 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. EWTN's Open Line Thursday. Doug Keck sitting in for Father Larry.
Raymond Arroyo. We need EWTN Radio for the reason that Mother Angelica founded this enterprise. She saw this as a holistic approach, reaching the whole person, bringing them truth and life.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
We need EWTN Radio for the reason that Mother Angelica founded this entire enterprise. She always saw this as a spiritual growth network. It was to be an enterprise in media that reached people in all aspects of their life. She saw this as a holistic approach to reaching the whole person in the middle of the world and bringing them truth and life.
Raymond Arroyo thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
Father John Riccardo.
The ultimate answer to the question of where I meet Jesus. Because obviously, in imperfect ways, I meet him almost anywhere. I meat him in creation, whether it's the majesty of a sunrise or a sunset. You sense and you see something of the person of God, his majesty, his power, his awe. I can have access to him in ways, in many places and fashions. The fullest place we meet Jesus, the place where you and I on earth most have access to the Father, where we accomplish God's will on earth, are those minutes on Sunday, which so many of us find tedious and somehow see as an obligation. So please God, by the power of his Holy Spirit, he will give us the grace to understand more profoundly what it is that really happens when you and I come to church.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
Hi, this is Cy Kellett. Later today on Catholic Answers Live, 2 hours of open forum with Jimmy Aiken and Mark Brumley. Catholic Answers Live, 6 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio. Now back to Open Line with Father Larry Richards.
EWTN is our toll-free number. Your opportunity to ask a question of Doug Keck, our President and Chief Operating Officer. The number again is 833-288-3986. And Sean has sent us a question on Twitter, and he notices he hasn't seen Lauren Ashburn recently on EWTN News Nightly.
Right, because Lauren decided that to step down. She is a mother and has young children, and that kind of a job like that, as much as you really would like to be the person to do it, and you feel called to participate in a wonderful venture like News Nightly, and she really helped to move us on from Brian and carried it forward. But I think it really just got to the idea that in her situation that she felt it was best for all involved, and for her, family and that to be able to spend more time with them. And again, a news job, if anybody's ever worked in news, it's a 24/7 job. I mean, you're in when you're not
more than ever.
Right. And when you're not in the office, you're checking information, you're writing stories, you're responding, you're following up on things. So it can really impact somebody's family life. So in general, I would just say that that's probably my understanding of why she made that decision. And again, there may be some other personal reasons we all have in our lives for making these decisions. But I think one of the great things is that we, as Catholics, we can respect people in those situations, and certainly in putting your family first, especially.
833-288-EWTN is your ticket to the program. Our next caller is Abe in Edgefield, South Carolina, listening to St. Paul Radio. Another first-time caller. You're bringing him out of the woodwork here. Abe, what's your question for Doug Keck?
Hello. Thank you for having me on. I want to thank everybody for all that y'all do on EWTN. And I listen daily on a lot of daytime hours, and my main question is there room in the scheduling for EWTN Radio proper to have maybe a little more balance toward like teaching and preaching, like displaying some of the great teachers of the faith amidst the call-in programs? So because I have a lot of experience also with the non-Catholic radio stations that they do a lot of great preaching, and it's very strengthening for your faith to have that. And I just know there's so much richness in the faith that we could be utilizing that for Catholic radio too.
Well, thanks, Abe. That's a great point. And certainly it's something we've struggled with on and off over the years, with the idea of that kind of a balance.
And we've kind of taken the attitude that a big part of our feedback and our own philosophy is that during the day we'd like to be live and interactive to whatever degree we can. And even though we do have a lot of call-in shows, they all have their own unique personality. And some of them actually incorporate a certain amount of teaching of the faith in them. Women of Grace comes to mind. And Dr. David Anders with Call to Communion.
Why was that the first one that came to mind?
I have a contractual obligation.
Okay, I was wondering. But yeah, like you said, David Anders, Open Line, all of those are answering teaching programs. I think maybe what Abe is also referring to, too, if you listen to a lot of Protestant radio and like that, you're getting basically the sermon that the pastor gave that Sunday or on Wednesday night and they buy the time and they present that information, and that's kind of the format of what they're doing. And obviously we have the availability online for you getting homilies. We also have EWTN Radio Classics.
That's exactly right.
Which maybe would be a great place for Abe to check out through our app, etc., because we have all those great shows on there.
Yeah, available on the app and at EWTN.com or EWTNradio.net. So we try to provide, there's no one size fits all programming structure in.
And we also make it available. So if our affiliates would prefer to take one of the programs or the programs running on EWTN Classics, which has the Mother Angelica or the Father Benedict Rochelle kind of teaching programs and those kind of things, that's an option for your local radio affiliate. So you could check with them too and see if they had any sense of that, or otherwise check out our app. And the way it is where these days you can listen to radio off your phone at any time.
Exactly. 833-288-EWTN. That's our toll-free number. We'd love to hear from you at 833-288-3986. A great question from Maria, who's watching us on Facebook Live, and she wants to know if you ever, this is Michael on YouTube, wanted to know if you ever saw Mother Angelica lose her temper.
Well, I think if I ever said no, Mother would probably send a lightning bolt down and strike me, because the fact is she always talks. Listen, one thing she was very honest about, she had a temper, and she would talk about Calabrese. That's what she was. Raymond would always say, Calabrese, that's what Mother Angelica is. So, yeah, I mean, Mother's like the rest of us. There were days where she was great, and there was days, the woman was in pain most of her life. She had trouble breathing. She had her bad legs, I mean, so we all know that when those situations, you're on medication, things like that, it can impact your reaction, your personality, and things like that. So those things happen. And just every person. Mother used to say, there's no plaster parent saints. You don't have things, melting in people's mouths. She used to always say, poor, St. Joseph with those lilies. He should be sitting there with a stone mason hammer. That's what he was doing. And so for yes, did I see Mother get upset? Yes, I saw her get upset at me. I also saw her hug me and tell me, we're all doing the best we can here. And I think and I've come to see it later, and I hope people don't take this wrong, but I've seen Mother's anger very much like our Lord's, where it was always directed at people who should know better. It was never at people who she felt like they don't understand, they don't get it. It's people she thought would know better, or people she was relying on. And Mother was very into loyalty and thought that was a really important part of being on the family and part of the EWTN family. That's why family was so important, and that kind of supportive and loyalty.
833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. Toll-free anywhere in North America. 833-288-3986. Now we'll get to Maria, who's watching on Facebook Live. Is your sister's name Maria?
I don't have a sister. Well, I have sisters, but they're religious sisters.
Yeah. Doug Keck does not insult our intelligence, but speaks directly and clearly. He asks the hard questions. I love him on Bookmark and Father Spitzer's Universe.
Well, thank you very much. I won't make a bad joke about it being a relative because, thank you very much. If you feel that way, that's terrific.
Well, listen, Mother Angelica, one of the characteristics of the way she brought this network up was that anybody who had an Orthodox point of view and who was loyal to our Lord, she opened what she viewed as his network to them. And I think Bookmark is a very good illustration of that. You've had the great pleasure of being able to bring so many great Catholic works of literature to the audience. And how did that whole thing get started? And where do you see it going from here?
Well, I actually worked on something in New York. It was called the Book Channel. We did it for a short period of time in New York as a weekend service. I thought it was the goofiest idea I'd ever heard when Mr. Dolan came up with it. I thought people read books, they don't watch shows about them. And then later on, I was a big fan of Brian Lamb on C-SPAN when he would do his book notes. And in a lot of ways, I'm a poor man's version of Brian Lamb in the style of the interview, and I try to do it, which is what I am. I'm not an expert on books. In fact, I hardly ever read books. I was watching old movies when I was a kid. That's where I worked on AMC, and I'm an old movie buff. Anybody who knows me knows that's what I know the most about. But what happened was we'd have great guests show up like Johnette or, Father Spitzer or somebody else would come in and be a guest on a live show. Maybe they'd talk a little bit about the topic. And I thought, well, they're already here. Why can't we do an interview just on the book? And let's talk more about the book and what it was in the book and writing a book and those things. In fact, originally, we used to have a show on the catechism, which the local bishop here did. And what we did was we shot tight on the set in the little book frame in the back of his set. That was the original set for Bookmark. And it was done in such a way somebody was already here. The set was already here, so it didn't take anything for us to do it. And it gave a great outlet for Catholic books when there really wasn't one.
833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Still plenty of time for your phone calls. John is in Shoreline, Washington, listening on Sacred Heart Radio. John, you're on with President Doug Keck.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. My question is to Doug, how did EWTN Publishing get going? Mm-hmm. What was the first book published? And are you working with other publishers? And what's the future for EWTN Publishing?
Well, EWTN Publishing is an idea that had been around for a long time, and it just is a question of us getting the focus on it. So basically, Michael Warsaw arranged a relationship we did with Sophia Press, where we came into a joint venture. Sophia Press is a separate organization. EWTN Publishing is a joint partnership between Sophia and EWTN on specifically books that are published that have to do specifically, for the most part, with EWTN. Many of the times the thought process was so-and-so is here. They did this wonderful book series for us. Let's take the series and turn it into a book. Because in a lot of cases, people were doing that in reverse, coming here, doing a series, and then doing a book. someplace else. The first one we printed was, of course, Mother Angelica's book, and since then we've put out our complete set. We've got a wonderful coffee table book that's going to come out, a tribute book sometime next year that the sisters are presently reviewing, which will be very much picture-oriented, a lot of pictures that have never been seen before. And we're trying to put out about a book, maybe a book, 2 books a month. Again, as you see, Father Connor, Father Milady, Father Gallagher, a lot of people related directly to EWTN. So really, we're focused on that. And at the same time, obviously, on Bookmark and our other shows, we feature books from Ignatius Press and OSV and across the board.
The recompilation of the mini books that Mother used to print back in the day has just been wildly popular. Did you think it would be as beautiful as it is when the initial idea came across your desk?
Well, I guess, in one way, yes. It's like a yes and a no. Mother's mini books are precious. They're wonderful. People always like them. We used to send them out all the time with the little paperback editions. And so I guess we thought they would be, we hoped that they would be, and that people would still connect to them. And I think as we talk so many times around here, Mother's writings and her shows seem to be more on top of things today, more prescient than they've ever been. And so, I guess we're pleased that they are. I can't say that I'm totally surprised, because there's something about Mother Angelica's personal relationship with our Lord and the insights that relationship and praying in front of the Blessed Sacrament has led to her in the writing she wrote, which she did in front of the Blessed Sacrament. All those books were written that way. And the time she would spend in general before she'd come on a live show and basically just open up the Bible and start teaching from there. And
the newest offering, this month's featured book from EWTN Publishing, is The Decalogue Decoded, What You Never Learned About the Ten Commandments, by Father Brian Milady, where he points out a lot of the often overlooked but very nourishing implications of the commandments, talks about how basically living out the Beatitudes will be fulfillment of those commandments for you. The Decalogue Decoded, What You Never Learned About the Ten Commandments, available at EWTNRC.com. Back to the phones we go. Mary Beth is in Columbus, Ohio, watching us on Facebook Live. Mary Beth, thanks for holding. You're on with Doug Keck.
Oh, boy. Mr. Keck, this is Mary Beth.
Hi, Mary Beth.
And I feel almost, I feel kind of nervous to talk to you. And I will have you know, that's new. I've met presidents before, and I've met all kinds of people, but I have what maybe we might call a Catholic crush on you.
Okay.
You have just been so important to EWTN and just such a big part of my life. Remember that one line from that movie, You Make Me Want to Be a Better Man? Mm-hmm. Well, your work at EWTN and everybody there makes me want to be a better Catholic, a better wife, a better mother, friend, kind of a better sibling. And, I just can't thank you enough. I live close to Canton, Ohio.
Okay, sure.
Where someday soon, I hope we'll have 2 women saints, Mother Angelica and also Rhoda Wise.
Right. And, Rhoda Wise, absolutely.
And I prayed to think, how might I help in the cause? And I happen to co-own, actually, the country's largest distributorship of safes and fireproof filing cabinets. Oh. And I'm sending both up to them to protect their records, to make sure, proof is really important with this whole process.
Absolutely.
So your work has inspired me to do that. And then one last thing, because I know you have other callers, but in my will, I have EWTN. In my current day bills, it's between the electric and gas. But also I have something that might be a little different. But I have instructions, if I were ever to be in the hospital, that I must have a TV with EWTN playing 24/7. You know how they say hearing is the last to go?
Right.
And I want to be able to hear it. I don't want to miss a program. But also I want the staff and any of my visitors to hear that also. You're a blessing.
Well, thank
you so much for everything you do.
Well, you're very kind, and I appreciate that you're really, I think, assigning to me something that is basically just the function of EWTN and the people who work here and Mother's mission and us following Mother's mission. And that's what we try to do here every day. And if it wasn't for all the people who work for EWTN here in Birmingham and Irondale and around the world, we couldn't do what we do. And you know what? If it wasn't for the sisters' prayers, it wasn't for your prayers, and if it wasn't for your financial donations that keep us going. It's an amazing situation. I came out of the standard secular business. Cable, the idea that this place is funded by people sending in small donations is simply mind-boggling to people in the industry. They can't believe it. And it truly is the loaves and the fishes. EWTN is, we keep reaching in and more comes out. And the more we try to do, we now have people all over the world. We launched in Macau. That's in China. We're in Vietnam. We have apps that they use in Vietnam so they can get around the blockage of the government there. Ukraine, Norway, all these different parts of the world. And again, we can only do that because of the support that people in the United States especially give us, because that's really where most of the funding comes from, and your prayers, because it's clearly people have been moved by the programming and moved by the people behind the network and the prayers for the network to make other people in other parts of the world want to support this work and say, we want this here.
These testimonies are very humbling, and you never get tired of hearing them, do you?
No, of course not. I mean, a lot of times I think one of the things I try to do is send out when we get comments from people around the world congratulating our radio shows you guys do, or TV shows or programs, or the fact that, somebody's mother, was so, as Mary Beth was talking about, was so comforted in the hospital in her final days because EWTN was there and the Mass was there and they wanted to thank us for that kind of thing. It's always good to have that because on like every other job, we're busy, we're getting stuff done, we're trying to do things the right way. And again, as people expect our quality to be competing with the secular out there, that's a money issue. It's also an effort issue. It's a talent issue. And it also means that people have to work harder and be that much more vigilant because you want it to be right. You want it to be correct. And so it's always good for us to be able to step back once in a while and get that little pat on the back. But what's also great is that we're in Birmingham, Alabama, which is in the buckle of the Bible Belt. And so we don't get a lot of that locally here. It's not like you would think we walk out the door and people go up and say, oh, there's Jack Williams and Jeanette. They might do that once in a while, but not like it might be in another part of the country where there's a lot more of a Catholic base. So I always viewed that as a protection to people working here to keep our heads under control. And I also think it was a way of justifying the fact that clearly this is a work of God.
That's right.
Started by a crippled nun in a place like this. It has to be a work of God. There's no other explanation.
Next stop, Potomac Falls, Virginia. Marie is in Potomac Falls, another first-time caller listening on our great affiliate in the D.C. area, Guadalupe Radio. Marie, what's your question today for Doug Keck?
I have two questions. One, a very fast one, is could you make the signal around here a little better in the D.C. area because it's very hard getting it when you're in the car. Number two, the one previous caller was talking about more formal courses during the day, and I mean, I tend to agree as someone who's from a Protestant background, considering the Catholic faith. One of the things that I'm really going to miss is the great sermons and the great teachings of, the Protestant radios, and especially apologetics. And I think that's something that would be awesome to have, just because I feel like that's one of the main, lacking of Catholics in general. When I speak to them, don't know a lot about, the Bible or about the faith itself. So it'd be awesome to have more like formal teachings. And I discovered Brian Piter on YouTube, and I thought, his explanations are. Oh, Petrie? Okay.
Maybe Brand Petrie? Okay. No, that's okay. I think. That's okay.
Yeah, and I love his short, to the point, formal educational videos, and I thought having that on the radio when people are driving, or apologetics like Ravi Zachariah, would be awesome.
Well, I think your point is well made, and obviously we've got a lot of material like that on the web and things like that. I think with the great thing about being Catholic and is that if you're inculcated in the faith and you are based in the faith, you can actually listen to Protestant ministers who do good jobs at explaining the Bible and not have it be a threat to your faith, especially since it's really the church who decided what's in the book. So it's our book. It's not a problem for us. But with that being the situation, yeah, I think it's a balance that we are always trying to look at and looking at different ways of providing more and more material. Like we said, with the Radio Classics as an option, possibly certainly through your phone, if that's there. As far as apologetics, I think from a, obviously open line, so many of our open line and Call to Communion is perfect apologetics show if you're trying to understand the teaching of the faith. Certainly Catholic Answers Live is a classic one for that. We do have some longer form things. Most of those things might be more on television, but are also available on our YouTube channel, where we've got probably 15,000 videos available perfectly for free. You can get them from there. And if you have Roku or Apple TV or any of those OTT services, EWTN is there. So there's always options for you to get more material, maybe not always on the radio, but certainly on the television side as well.
Julie is in Lakeland, Florida. She's listening to EWTN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 130. Julie, you're on with Doug Keck.
Hi, Doug.
Hello. How are you, Julie?
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm fine. I'm doing great. I was wondering if you would start putting a lot of these books in audio form where I could put them on my Kindle.
Sure. Well, we have a couple. We have two books right now that I think we did the one with Dr. David Anders, and we also did the one on the angels with Father did for us. So there's a couple that have been done already, and so we're looking at doing more. And as we do more, we will get them out and available. I think one of the things that not that people need to understand or maybe but could understand is that, most of the things get done by the same group of people who are doing different things at different times. And so, kind of like getting the audiobooks, they were recorded here. They had to be edited by Tom Price when he wasn't doing a radio show. So some of it is just the fact of us, finding an audience, making sure it's out there, and then being able to put the assets behind it to be able to make the material available on a regular basis. But that's certainly our intent.
Doug, as we wind down the hour here, we're very grateful for your willingness to make yourself available to our listeners today. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your program with Father Spitzer. It's, a couple years old now. And Father Spitzer had several great teaching series on the network when he was the president at Gonzaga. Mm-hmm. But this has really incorporated his vast knowledge of the universe into a format that I think is probably even more digestible for viewers than his teaching programs were in the past.
Well, I hope it's at least something that people find beneficial. Certainly the series he did, starting off with one on pro-life, which is when the first time we really worked together. And like I've always said to people, we did book interviews together, and we just always seemed like we got along really well. He laughs at my bad jokes, and we both like the Three Stooges. But yeah, I think people appreciate the fact that somebody can talk on the intellectual level that he can about the issues that face our faith from a science atheistic perspective, a secular attack, which is quite vicious, much more vicious than it used to be. And certainly so much of it is younger people who've basically had their faith taken away from them. They may not have been catechized to begin with enough, but whatever little was there kind of gets sucked dry by what they get in college, or certainly what they get bombarded with in the secular media and social media. And Father Spitzer can talk on a level and focus on things like that I think is unique and different. Sometimes you have to listen to him twice, but sometimes I think just having the idea that says, here's a guy who's a genius, and he is a genius, explaining why what I believe is true, and I may not understand it all, but I feel better about it knowing that somebody that smart thinks that what I believe is true.
Well, Doug, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today, and maybe the next time Father Larry goes on retreat, we'll have you back.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Father Larry.
There you go. On behalf of our affiliate host, our president and COO, Doug Keck, our producer, Michael McCall, call screener Ryan Penny, and our social media master, Mr. Jeff Burson, I'm Jack Williams. Thanks so much for carving a little time out of your Thursday to join us here on EWTN's Open Line. Back at it again tomorrow. Our very own Vice President of Theology, Colin Donovan, is in the house taking your theology questions. Until we get together tomorrow, God bless.